polls or surveys or doing other ways to talk to constituents. So I appreciate all of them being here with us today. Also on the call, Chester County Chamber belongs to an alliance of chambers in Chester County. There are 9 of us, stretching from Oxford to Phoenixville and back again. 9 of us serving different communities, and our chamber serving the region. Several of those executives are on with us today, but since we're dealing with elected officials from more of the southern part of the county, I particularly want to highlight 2 of my colleagues, Cheryl Kuhn from the Southern Chester County Chamber of Commerce. Cheryl's on, and she has her banner flying proudly behind her, and Chris Grove from the Oxford Area Chamber, and I want to recognize and thank them. And we've been working and talking almost daily with one another, and I appreciate everybody being here. So our goal today is a few-fold. One is to make sure that we get a chance to be up to speed where things are. The second is to have, well, the elected officials will probably tell you they've been inundated with social media, op-eds, and emails from us, but we want to make sure they have a chance to talk to you and for you to share your perspective, but also to allow the elected officials to let each one, him or her, share their perspective on how they're approaching this, what their goals are, what their concerns are, what their personal points of interest are, so we can have that dialogue as we all do this. And as I get ready to introduce the legislators, just a few programming administrative notes. One is we're going to ask everybody to stay on mute until you have a question. Second, if you have a question on the Zoom feature, you have 2 options. You can either raise your hand Zoom-wise, or you can add a chat. If you raise the question via chat, just let me know, please, whether you want to ask the question or you'd like me to. And when offering a question, be kind enough, if you would, identify yourself if you prefer not to. If you could just share any information about the industry you're working in, tourism, restaurants, dog grooming, just to give some idea and help the elected officials understand the context or the unique challenges you might be facing getting your business back up and running. Just want to open with a few data points. Our chamber, working with the Economic Development Council and all the other chambers, did survey businesses in Chester County. We had nearly 700 businesses reply. We learned that 3/4 of the businesses in the county are either closed or operating at 75% less capacity. In the month of April, more people applied for unemployment in Chester County than in the prior 15 months combined. So despite our relative strength of our economy, relative to the nation, relative to the state, the challenges economically are real here, as are the health issues here real as well. So with that, again, let's keep our phones on mute. Let us know you have a question. We will do our best to get through them all. Going to introduce the elected officials one at a time and have them go through it. State Senator Killion will be the first. I'm going to introduce him and then have the elected officials move in alphabetical order. And then at the end, we'll go in reverse alphabetical order. So first is Representative Tom Killion, who is a state senator, former member of county council in Delaware County, former member of the Chester County Chamber at one point when he was in the private sector. His district does cover the parts of Delaware County and then along the south in Chester County. And he's had a number of pieces of legislation, which he's been sharing recently on opening up different sectors of the economy. I want to thank Senator Tom Killion for being with us. I'm going to put my phone on mute, and then we're going to turn it over to Senator Killion. Then after that, we'll go through our state house members, starting with Representative Barrar as we go through it alphabetically. So I'm going to go on mute. And Senator Killion, thanks for being here, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Guy, and I won't take up too much time. You know, we entered this a little over 60 days ago. We were asked to quarantine, the governor, and I agree with them, to quarantine, to flatten the curve and to prevent our hospital healthcare systems from being overloaded with the influx of COVID-19 patients. We did that. The curve is flattened. We never were overloaded in our hospitals. As a matter of fact, we set up beds at Glen Mills School for anticipating that we would need beds for non-COVID hospitalizations. Never came to be. Those beds were then moved up to Mario Scavella's district of Poconos, Monroe County, because of its proximity to New York. Those beds were never used. We filled the Leah Center. I think they used 4 beds at Leah, so we clearly never overran our hospitals. My conversations with the health systems, they have plenty They have everything they need now. They're actually going back to routine operations. So we did what we had to do. And I firmly believe that it's time now to responsibly open businesses that can be open. I'm just going to use one example. What we passed yesterday, 2 days ago, I guess, a bill that would allow garden centers open. Many of them owned by mom and pops. Hey guys, I'm on here. Many of them opened by family businesses, and they're shut down. But I can go to Home Depot and buy all the plants I need to plant in my yard for Mother's Day or for Easter. And I just think that's simply unfair. And I think it's actually counterproductive. You are now forcing more people into Lowe's and Home Depot. Had you not, if you left the garden centers open, we would have spread the people out even more, and you'd have less social contact. That's just one example. We could do this right. We can do it responsibly. Following the current guidelines, we are a long way to get the yellow or green. The governor is, as everyone knows, the vast majority of the cases are in nursing homes. Vast majority of the deaths are in nursing homes. The state actually mandated that nursing homes take COVID-19 patients into those nursing homes. And if you take those numbers out, which we've all, even at I don't know about Chester County, but the Delaware County commissioners have asked those numbers not to be included to move us to yellow. We could get there a lot quicker, but the administration is refusing to do that. I'll end it with that. I know we got a lot of people on this Zoom.
Thank you, Senator. We're going to turn it over to Representative Barrar. Representative Barrar is from the 160th District. He represents portions of Delaware and Chester County as well, and has chaired the Military and Emergency Preparedness Committee for a number of years. And we appreciate your being with us, Representative. I'm going to mute and turn the floor to you.
Thank you, Guy. Sorry I missed yesterday's event. I was on the turnpike driving up here, and the speaker had called the night before a session day to basically ratify what the Senate did the day before. But I'll tell you what, we find ourselves at a period of time, and it's so hard to believe that 3 months ago we were enjoying some of the best economic times our country's ever seen. Being old enough to remember the Reagan years well, was probably the last time we saw that type of growth coming out of our economy, and it breaks my heart to see where we are today. Tom put a plug in for garden centers. I spent 24 years of my life running a garden center. I owned a garden center along with my wife, and I tell everybody, because we have to buy so much stuff up front, a lot of our plants, a lot of our supplies, we pay for them in January and February, and not to be allowed to be open. I would probably have a bankruptcy lawyer on the phone right now if it wasn't for the job that I have today. I do not longer own a garden center, so I sold that once I got elected because I made a commitment to do this job full time. But mostly we deal with, we have been dealing with, I think all our offices are inundated with I probably get several dozen calls every single day from people who've applied for unemployment, can't get it. I had a guy yesterday literally threatened to kill people on the phone. I was able to calm him down, and he'd been 8 weeks without income. He was down to his last couple dollars, and the desperation in his voice was just incredible. One of the staffers, not working for me, but at UC, wanted me to call the police and have him arrested. And I said, no. I said, we failed him. I said, it's not his fault. He's at his wit's end. And I'm hearing that a lot. I'm hearing the desperation of small business owners more than anything. And that's what breaks my heart the most is I know what it's like to take every penny you own and invest it into a small business, and at no fault of your own. Now you may be closing your shop forever. And that just shouldn't be. We should be, government should be more of a partner in this than a dictator, the way that we've seen government going. We should be out there looking at businesses and saying, show us how you can stay open. I saw an interesting restaurant concept the other day. A lady that owned a restaurant, she literally put crystal clear shower curtains between every table. And I thought, and there's an opening for the waiter to come over and take care of them. So, I think if we would unleash the power of entrepreneurs and say, be as innovative as you can be and take this task and run with it. Open up. If you can do it, if you feel in your heart you can do it safely and protect your people, okay, then do it. Let's get them open. Let's get Pennsylvania back to work again. And that's what we've been focusing on. The House and the Senate, we've sent plenty of great bills to the governor, and unfortunately they fall on deaf ears and the governor refuses to. And like Tom said earlier, if you just separate the nursing home numbers out of the actual numbers, okay, we would have a totally different picture of what the actual COVID-19 looks like in the general population. And I know in the Senate they had a couple doctors from University of Pittsburgh Medical Center were out there, and they talked about how bad this was to do to the citizens, because basically we weakened our immune system by forcing everyone to stay away, and literally your immune system is not as energized as it would be if you're exposed to people all day long. And it was some pretty interesting topics. Quite a few of our members used it in their testimony on the House floor defending bills. But I could talk for hours on this. I apologize, but I know you want to get through this. So I'm here for questions and looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thanks again for being with us. We're going to move to Representative John Lawrence. Representative Lawrence from the 13th District in the southern and southwestern portions of our county, down around Avongrove. Representative Lawrence also represents a community in Lancaster County, in addition to he and his family living in Chester County. Representative Lawrence serves on a number of committees, including appropriations, agriculture, professional licensure, and I would say, as like many of you, have been inundated with updates and emails. I don't know that any legislator has sent more emails, updates on everything from licenses to passports to tax issues, going above and beyond, trying to keep us updated and keep us aware of what's going on. So I want to thank Representative Lawrence for being here and being on the call, and I'm going to go into mute. And Representative Lawrence, John, the floor is yours.
Guy, thank you. I appreciate that. And I appreciate the good work that Cheryl Kuhn here in the Southern Chester County Chamber and Chris Grove are doing in Oxford. And I appreciate each of the business owners who's taken time out of their day to be on this call. As Senator Killion and Representative Barrar, and I'm sure Representative Sappey will mention as well, we also have been inundated with calls from business owners and from folks with unemployment comp. Just very briefly, and I'm sure this will come up a little bit later in the call, the House did advance two bills that the Senate had previously passed. We advanced these yesterday to the governor's desk, House Bill 2455 and House Bill 2412. Those bills deal specifically with real estate and then a number of other industries, including car dealerships, hair salons, garden centers, to reopen those businesses going forward. Everyone on this call, from a legislative perspective, was a yes vote on those bills, and we are waiting for the governor's action on them. He has 10 days to take action on them. We're the only state in the nation that shut down completely with real estate, and that presents a real problem. We have a number of folks who've called this office who are in dire straits just due to personal situations that need to move forward with regard to real estate. I've also been working with our county commissioners with regard to testing. We had a pretty challenging situation. Chester County and our commissioners, Mary Moskowitz, Josh Maxwell, and Michelle Kickline, deserve a lot of credit. They purchased tens of thousands of coronavirus tests, and unfortunately the state stood in their way for over 2 months for them using those tests. It was ridiculous red tape. We moved legislation unanimously through the House that would prioritize testing and require the state to allow Chester County to move forward with that testing. Chester County has since moved forward with that testing under a private contract, which is several $100,000s that they wouldn't have had to spend had the state allowed them to move forward under the authority of the state lab. But I think that's an issue where, particularly with testing, whatever your perspective is on the coronavirus and whatever the path forward's going to be, testing is going to be a part of it, right? Whether we see a vaccine that could come shortly or may never come, drugs that could come shortly or may never come, we're going to have a robust testing mechanism in place going forward to beat this. There's a number of other conversations happening in Harrisburg with regard to education. What is it going to look like in the fall with regard to schools? The state budget is going to be very challenging this year. We have a 20% revenue shortfall that is going to be very challenging to fill. But you know, I know that the primary purpose on this call is what are we doing to help our small business owners? So I'm more than happy to take any questions. And you know, if we don't get a chance to get through all the questions here on this call, more than happy to speak with anyone, particularly from my district at any time here in Jennersville. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Representative. And our next state representative is Representative Chris Sappey from the 158th District. Representative Sappey is in her first term, but is no stranger to state government and understanding how it works and where its challenges lie. She previously worked as an aide or chief of staff to a number of elected officials, including State Senator Andy Dinniman and Representative Carolyn Comita. Representative Sappey serves on a number of committees and involved in a number of caucuses. She serves with some of the folks on this phone, working on emergency preparedness and in agriculture. So we're so glad she could be with us and participate in this and to share her perspective as well. So at this point, I'm going to go again on mute. And Representative Chris Sappey, Representative, the floor is yours. Representative, you may be on mute. I don't know if that's your doing or ours. We make sure that her microphone is live. It's live.
I don't know if she walked away from her phone, maybe. I don't know.
Okay. So why don't we do this? We'll move on, and then maybe Marion, if we can check offline to see if she had a technical issue, and we'll be coming back, and so she can have a chance to do that. And then when we get into questions, she can certainly jump into the queue. We had a few questions coming in. Again, I remind you, if you want to raise your Zoom hand or submit something in a chat, we'll pose the question. Just let us know whether you want to pose it or you want us. We did have our first question from Bill Raup. Bill, you had a question. I'm going to go into mute, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you for all the representatives for being here, and it's good that you're out here to hear. I'm a digital marketing agency in Coatesville, Bill Raup, search engine marketing, and I have many clients in Chester County, and they're just businesses, and I do search optimization for them. I have gyms, I have yoga studios, realtors, restaurants as clients, and they're all out of business. I mean, they're basically on life support. They can't sustain another 30 days of being shut down. So, and looking in Chester County, I know there's 89% of the deaths are from COVID are in nursing homes. So I'm asking you, when will we be totally open, or at least have a date? When will we be open? Right now, we have no date except for June 4th, and we still don't know if we're going to be in the red on July 4th. This is kind of outrageous. For instance, a restaurant needs to plan 2 weeks in advance to open up to train their employees. So without a date, we can't even plan to open. So when are you guys going to demand from Wolf to open? I know the Republicans are doing a great job and you're fighting, but there's an executive order. So how are we going to beat this? I mean, we need a date when we can open. And my question is, what are the metrics? We have no metrics. So I open up to the Stephen and Tom and John and Christina. What are your answers here? Because this is ridiculous.
You want me to take that? Guy, you want me
Yeah,
to
I'd
take
like
that?
to jump in too after you're done, Tom.
Yes, please, Tom.
I'm just going to be honest. The pressure has to come from the public.
Right.
He is not going to move. We don't know who he's getting his advice from. We assume it's Dr. Levine. That he's dug in. You heard his speech. He called business owners that want to open up, that they're deserters, and politicians, elected officials that are encouraging them to open up responsibly are cowards. I mean, these are pretty strong words. Now you're beginning to see some cracks and it's up to the business community, frankly, to put pressure on the members that all voted no yesterday in the House and then voted no in the Senate, because the only way we can get around this is start over business to override his veto. We can't beat him in the courts. If we will lose if we go to the state Supreme Court. We actually first time in decades subpoenaed records from him because he won't let us know who's making decisions on the waiver process. I mean, but what we're starting to see is the votes we took yesterday. We were one vote short in the Senate be able to override him. And Steve, correct me if I'm wrong. I heard in the House you had plenty of votes to override, and then at the last minute they must have been twisted arms. Folks start going from green to red on the board. Is that accurate? So we need the business community to pressure their elected officials. We saw in Delaware County where a Democratic member previously voted against the realtors, and then she heard that the realtors were doing a $1.2 million ad that pushed against members that voted against it. She voted with the realtors yesterday because felt the pressure. But Governor Wolf is not listening. He's not listening to us.
Bill, I wish you could see my emails that come in, because I get hundreds of them that sound just like you, that talk about their businesses is on life support, that if we were to open. Look, we all did the right thing. We all realized the need for this because of the models that were being used at the time. Said we needed 2 or 3 weeks to prepare our hospitals to get the proper amount of PPE. But Pennsylvania has about 37, I think that the number was close to 38,000 hospital beds in the state of Pennsylvania. Right now, according to the last stat that I saw, that it said that we have 35,000 empty hospital beds, and our hospitals are going bankrupt too, because they're not making any money off anything. They don't have any COVID patients in their hospital, and at the same time, they're not allowed to do any of the other I think, but it said, the thing popped up, said I was muted. So we're seeing the hospitals are bleeding. I think that the figure they used was just under $3 billion a month that they are bleeding. They're looking at the state to make that money up, and our revenues are down. I don't know if what they're hearing in the Senate, but we're looking at anywhere from $5 billion and up in a shortage of revenue. So our ability to be able to get out there and help without some type of federal help coming in is going to be very, very difficult. Right now, we are getting money from the federal government, and they're telling us that the money we're getting today has to be used for COVID-related expenses. We can't use it to like pay the pension or things like that and reduce our expenses. So we're kind of in a real conundrum here on what to do. I can guarantee everybody on this line here wants to see businesses open, and we want to see them open safe. And as I said earlier in my comments, I think if we unleash the spirit of the entrepreneur, that the entrepreneurs in this area will rise to the occasion, and they will take the challenge and will beat this thing. But if you keep them, lock them up in their home, they can't do a darn thing to help anybody. Thanks.
I
appreciate that.
I believe that Representative Sappey, I'm hoping we've resolved our technical issues. So I want to do 2 things. One is certainly, Chris, if you wanted to comment on this issue, but also share your remarks. We hope we've resolved all this.
All right, I'm speaking now. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, great. Okay. I'm going to be really brief because I know we're short on time, but it's great to be here with everybody and to hear your concerns. I appreciate all the people who have been reaching out to my team also throughout all of this. I can, as Guy said, I've been a staff person for many years before I ran for office, and so I can tell you that one of the things I have found incredibly frustrating is the fact that, you know, we've had 10 years to address our unemployment compensation system after the Great Recession, and we didn't do that. And so now, you know, we are finding ourselves in a situation where folks aren't getting paid for, you know, months at a time, and it's just beyond frustrating. So, you know, we're working very hard on all of that, and we have numerous concerns. Among them are getting people back to work. We understand that, and I do believe that there's balance. I think maybe some of you have seen on my social media, I think the time has passed for us to be pointing fingers and talking about who did what and who said what. I think it's really time for us to have a concrete, clear, balanced plan to get everybody back out there. And I think, you know, this week, at least in the House and the Senate, we took some steps towards that in getting some of our businesses, you know, ready to go back that can follow these guidelines. And so I was happy to support that. So I'm going to stop here and just let the questions keep coming. Thank you so much.
Sure. There's a few, I want to throw out a question based on a few messages I'm getting from email and things that appeared on the chat. And Representative Barrar, I think you touched on it, but I would ask for each of you, and perhaps we can start with Representative Lawrence. What would be the most effective way at this point for business people to try and get our voices to be heard so that there's greater movement or greater urgency in getting us reopened? I would mention that while we've been on this call, the governor has announced 12 additional counties going from red to yellow. The closest one to us, I believe, is York or Cumberland County. So we're still not in striking distance of any of the counties near us. So what are some of the things that small businesses can do to be effective to make sure their voices are heard, whether it's moving from red to yellow or yellow to green in general, or speaking to the specifics about their industry, what they do from retail to marketing to whatever it might be? What would be the guidance? Why don't we start with Representative Lawrence, if we could, with you, and then if anyone else would like to jump in.
So, Gaia, and I'm looking at the chat here, there's a lot of questions like that in the chat. So I'll make 2 points. First, when the legislature, you know, so for example, construction was closed across the Commonwealth. So most construction happens outdoors. You know, a lot of it happens outdoors. People can be far away from each other. It can proceed certainly in a much safer manner than, you know, 300 people packing into Walmart, right? So we moved legislation in the House Bill 2400, which would reopen construction in the Commonwealth. And what we saw was very shortly after that, the governor unilaterally decided, yes, we can go back to work with construction, right? So rather than being forced to, you know, sign or veto that bill, he simply, we saw movement after the bill moved through the House. And we've seen that happen on other things as well. We don't have enough time to go through all of it as well, but moving legislation has led to actions from the governor. As far as what anyone on this call, what can I do, right? What can I do if you're listening to this call right now? My encouragement to you would be, you know, at the end of the day, there's 3 branches of government. The courts have ruled in favor of the governor's orders several times over the past several weeks, Supreme Court of Pennsylvania. There are other cases that have been filed, and we'll see where that goes. My encouragement to you would be to reach out to the other legislators that you may know, to legislators across Chester County. We've seen some bipartisan support on some of these bills, but we are short of where we would need to be if we're looking to override a veto. On some of these bills, it's been very close. It might be a matter of 3 or 4 votes. So, I mean, you know, selling real estate is not a partisan issue, right? Maybe some of this, you know, some might say, you know, oh, this is partisan. Selling real estate is not a partisan issue. People need to live in a house no matter where they live across the Commonwealth. And if we see that bill vetoed, then there needs to be pressure put on folks to try to move things forward. And again, I want to stress, no one's talking about being reckless here. All of the bills we're talking about here say you've got to comply with the CDC, you've got to wear the mask and be socially distant or whatever it is. Unfortunately, a lot of this has become very political and partisan, particularly, I might add, by outside groups that aren't even from Pennsylvania, right? I think that's all ridiculous, right? It's like I said earlier with the testing. Who could be opposed to testing, right? So that's what my encouragement would be, is that you need to be in touch with your legislators. And if you know folks in other parts of Pennsylvania or around, other areas, Lancaster County, wherever it might be, Philadelphia, they need to hear from their people as well.
Thank you. Would any elected officials care to weigh in on that issue? Because I think that's where we are at this point, is we're into week 9, that there's a sense of disconnect from the governor's office with businesses. And I think folks would, they don't want to be heard for the sake of being heard, but they want to be heard to share their insights. I think one of the things I would say to all the elected officials, probably what you're hearing is similar to what we're hearing at all of our chambers. There's almost no one that contacts us that says, the heck with it, I'm doing what I want. Almost everybody does it from a context of, I want to know what the rules are, I want to know what the standards are so I can comply and get back open. And there's that focus on being safe for their employees and their coworkers and their customers. So with that, if any of the other elected officials care to weigh in on this issue of how to make sure that your voice is heard, that would be very helpful from your perspective.
Yeah, John did a great job of giving a pretty good analysis there. But I think what a lot of people aren't aware of, because down here our press really doesn't cover that much of what happens in Harrisburg and the things that we see. I mean, if you've noticed the governor's press conferences, there's no live reporters in the room. For the longest time, up until I think this week, the Right to Know office had been shut down, so we couldn't even file requests to get information from the governor. And some of us have cell phone numbers of some of his staffers, but to try to get in touch with the governor is very, very hard. And I don't know who he listens to or who influences him, but it's certainly not our legislative leaders in any way, shape, or form. But on these votes, a lot of them, especially the 24-12, I think we were within 3 or 4 votes of a veto-proof majority when that vote passed yesterday. And so it's going to be incumbent to put pressure on some of our, I guess you'd say, more conservative legislators to step up to the plate and put up that vote to do the overrides. But we need to start running these override bills, and I think that's pressure we need to apply to our leadership, that we want to run these override bills and get them, at least get votes recorded on them, so our citizens will know who's voting with them and who's voting against them.
Thank you.
And
I'm going to, please go ahead.
And there's another.
Can I?
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
It's Chris. I would add to that it's important to speak to all legislators, whether they're progressive, liberal, conservative, doesn't matter what their stripe is. We all need to hear from you, and we need to hear what your personal stories are, how your business is being impacted, how your family's being impacted, how your employees are being impacted. I think, a lot of us are reading that this whole thing is impacting women in, numbers that we haven't seen before in economic downturns. So we need to hear from everybody, because there are so many different factors at play that may move a particular legislator. Okay, so but feel free to reach out to anyone. Doesn't matter whether they're in your district or not, too.
And just to add, Senator Killion, just to add to that here we're going to be the last to be open. We know that. When he decides to do that, we don't know, and we're going to continue to push to try to get it done. But the other side of this, which he needs to realize, is really 2 things. One, that we're the economic engine for the Commonwealth. Our 5 counties are what deliver over 40% of the revenue to Harrisburg. We got to, even if we open up these other regions, it's not going to solve our deficit problem. We need the Southeast to get back to work, because that's where all the money comes from. The vast majority of the PIT and the sales tax is generated right here in our 5 counties. He needs to realize that. And then in my conversations with doctors, when it came out from that UPMC testimony in front of the Senate the other day, is that they now believe we're doing more harm than good. But that by keeping people locked up, that we're not, and people not getting treated for other things non-COVID related, we're doing more harm than good. And the governor just needs to begin to understand that.
Thank you, Senator. We have a question from Rachel. Rachel, please go ahead and make your question, make your point.
Sure. So I just was curious if it would be helpful for, and I see a couple answers in the chat here about that. I just thought it would be helpful to kind of start a conversation about what businesses could do so we can communicate to legislators the needs that we're seeing, but is there anything that we can do regarding making a specific plan for when reopening does happen that might kind of ease the governor's concerns and the health department, and to just sort of show that we're thinking about the health and safety of the public, and we have specific plans in place for how to ensure that people are going to stay safe.
Rachel, I think a lot of the business sectors have come to us and told us their plans, and I know the car dealers and the realtors have all gotten together and said, this is how we make selling real estate safe. These are the things we can do. This is how we do an open house in this new age. This is how we open up a restaurant, you know, and I just believe that the ideas are plentiful. It's just we need to get the people to come together, put that plan down, and take it to the governor and say, look, we understand the concerns, and health has to be the #1 concern. But if we don't start taking care of the economic health of our state and our country, we're not going to be able to pay for medicine and healthcare. We're not going to be able to pay for PPE. There's a lot of things in our society we're not going to be able to do if the economic health of our state dies. And we're on the verge. I listened to the Fed chairman the other day talking about that how bad this is right now for us to be in this position. And the sad thing is we have governors out there that don't want to hear it. This is, I mean, if I'm talking blunt, this is about the stupidest idea that we've ever done. It's almost like we're committing suicide as a nation economically. And it's sad to see. It ticks me off to the end of the world. So I'm trying to reserve my comments.
So maybe
I'm glad you're being reserved.
Rachel, maybe to talk a little bit about, you know, what will reopening look like? And obviously for every business owner on this call, it's going to look a little different. But just some advice that I've been giving folks and again, very briefly, because I know our time is precious on this call, I would look at some of the advice that the governor has put out to the larger big box stores. So for example, if you've seen, they are required to keep 50% of their occupancy that they would normally be allowed under the fire code. They're supposed to use every other register, and then once an hour switch to the empty registers and wipe down with bleach the ones they were using for the last hour. So as you look at these kind of procedures, you can imagine that those are some of the things that might be coming your way in your business. I would be in contact with your insurance agent, whoever provides insurance for your business, to talk to them about what reopening will look like. I would be in contact with your legal counsel. What will reopening look like? I would also encourage you to be in touch with, if you are, for example, if you're a cosmetologist, or if you're someone who is licensed through the Commonwealth, I would encourage you to be in contact with your professional trade organization. So for example, the governor recently released guidance for dentists about, I believe this was 3 or 4 days ago, how dentists need to proceed with various things. I can tell you that they didn't just pull those out of the hat. They talked to the Pennsylvania Dental Association and said, could you provide us with your feedback? Now, I don't know what the Pennsylvania Dental Association did with their membership, but if you're in a cosmetology organization or one of these types of statewide trade groups, I would be in contact with them and say, look, I'd like to provide some input as far as it goes with whatever your line of business is, in case the governor reaches out to them.
I would just add that on our chamber webpage, as well as many of the other chamber web pages, there is a series of links to best practices and standards. There's a link to the governor's page and his 7-page document on reopening. There's a link to the CDC guidance for reopening and the protocols to put in place. So there are some guidelines there, but to Representative Lawrence's, there are also things, as all of you know, that are unique to your business. The type of business, are you a B2B business? Are you a B2C business? Do you have to engage customers? Do you have to deliver a product to a customer? How do you provide it? Are you a service industry or not? But I would start with those three things, as Representative Lawrence said: the governor's webpage information, which is on ours. Currently, it's a 7-page document. The CDC guidelines, which is a 4-page document, and then the trade association you may belong to, from realtors to dog groomers to cosmetologists, to see what may be there. And when in doubt, whether it's one of the chambers on this call or the elected officials, I'm sure we can provide more guidance. But lastly, in some cases, we need that guidance from the bottom up. We need you to think about it and to recommend best practices, because if we wait for the top down, that may take a few weeks or months longer than it need to be. So with that, I wanted to ask again some questions that had come in or from other town halls. Two, one is on I'm going to throw both questions out and certainly invite comment to one or either, but in the interest of time. The one is that has there been, is there an effort to have the governor publicize what the metrics are that are being used to allow us to open? In the beginning, there was a dashboard, and it's been dormant, hasn't been updated. And to go back to the issue of planning, if we knew the metrics that we needed to have 1 of this, 2 of this, and 3 of the other, this way, again, speaking for myself, I'm never going to understand this the way that a doctor's going to understand it, or a chemist or a biologist is going to understand it. But if you had it in sort of that terms, people could get a sense where this is going instead of waiting for these press conferences that happen every 1 or 2 weeks. So is there a way to get some metrics published that give us an idea, or a timeline that give us some idea? And then the second is, in terms of metrics, as of next week, every state that touches Pennsylvania has a plan to reopen with a timeline. And from New York State to Delaware, Ohio, and even in Maryland, and even in New Jersey, where Governor Murphy has begun to give some autonomies to local communities, we're actually going to have a situation where by the end of the month, more businesses will be back to work in New York State than in Pennsylvania, which is interesting since their infection rate's been 7 times ours. So I would ask for the representatives who want to jump in on either of those 2 questions. The one is, how can we get some clarity on the metrics to help us plan? And secondly, is there guidance, things we can learn from the other states who seem to be moving at a faster pace than ours, perhaps lessons we can learn than talking to our peers in Delaware or Ohio or New York that might help guide us to do this safely, which again is what we want to do. We don't want to reopen wildly, we want to open it safely.
Guy, I can tell you, this is Christina, that there are several of us here in the Southeast in my caucus that have been pushing our leadership and the governor's office hard to get this information. We're frustrated also that we don't have a view to it, and how do you move forward if you don't have a specific plan? And I think, more importantly, people to start to lose faith. And I think what we're hearing now is a lot of folks are just going to open and or conduct business without following any guidelines just because they need to. And we understand that, but we'd rather them do it safely than not. So I know I am, and a lot of my colleagues here from the Southeast in my caucus are pushing for this. And I'm quite certain my friends on the other side of the aisle are doing the same thing.
Can I just jump in?
Yeah, please, Senator.
I mean, what he's saying, to get from red to yellow, you need 50 cases or less over a 14-day period. That's going to take a while if we're counting nursing home numbers. They have given no indication, nothing, as to what it takes to go from, and when asked, they say we're still trying to figure that out, what it takes to go from yellow to green. So there's really, and that's what I find so frustrating. In my conversations with Dr. Levine, I said, Doctor, give me the 2-minute answer that I could say to someone that when I get stopped in a Wawa, what do we need to look at to know when we can get back to work? And then she gave me a 10-minute answer, which didn't help at all, and I barely understood. So that's where we are, and that's why we just have to keep pushing this governor, and forget him. He doesn't care. He's not running again. We need to push those members that still have his back regarding not allowing businesses can operate safely to operate safely.
there anyone else cared to comment on either of those things?
No, I'm good.
Let me ask a question that again has come up in other conversations and applies, unfortunately. It was discussed earlier, but I'd like to get a little more of a sense of what you're hearing or thinking or what can be done from the legislature. We are approaching 2 million Pennsylvanians who are unemployed. There are thousands more who have been subjected to rolling furloughs or pay cuts or reduced fees for services. But as to the 2 million, the latest count from Penn Live was that 500,000, nearly a quarter, hadn't gotten their paycheck, their unemployment checks yet. What can be done? Because I don't think there's anything more cruel than to close someone's business and then to threaten them with legal action or sanction if they reopen, and then urge them to go to the unemployment system and have them wait 3, 4, or 5 weeks for a check when they have no other source of income. So is there a sense when the unemployment comp fund will get back up to speed, because there are hundreds of thousands of people who've gone weeks, if not longer, waiting for some sort of income?
And that's the biggest point of contention, Guy, in my office is I have 4 ladies that work for me. They are doing nothing but unemployment all day long. The number of calls coming in. Every night I go to my emails, I sit down and I start doing emails, and I spend, so much time just sending these emails out to my staffers, asking them in the morning to get in touch with workers' comp for them. And sadly, the business owners, because the system wasn't prepared to take self-employed and 1099 independent contractors and gig workers and that. So when they started applying, they were all rejected. And I think it took probably about 5 weeks before we got the federal regulations that allowed these people then to apply for the unemployment comp. And still, even our system is so bad now. I was told by my staff that the system, when they input their data and their pay, that the system would not allow them to put $100,000 annual income into the system. That's how far back the system is and how bad it is. So we're praying to God that this system is up and running. I think at the Senate hearing, 2 weeks ago, Tom, the Secretary of Labor said there is no backlog anymore and everyone has their PIN number. And if I could have got through a computer screen, I probably would have choked them, because that's all we're hearing from people is, how are we going to get our money? They get debit cards with no PIN numbers, or PIN numbers don't work, and they tell them then when they do get into the system, then there's no money in the account. So all kinds of failures here. But then again, in their defense, we've had almost in a 3-4 week period of time, we've had over 1.7 million people applied for a government benefit in that short a time. And I doubt whether there's many governments that could handle that type of surge the way this hit the unemployment office. So, we're hoping that they're doing better, but we're on the phone with them all day long, fighting with them to try to get PIN numbers and accurate information. And then we were told back, I think it was about 4 weeks into this, that they actually lost 20,000 applications, that they couldn't find them. And so you can imagine if you were one of those 20,000 people that you probably wanted to kill somebody at some point, So it's been frustrating, and it's been frustrating as heck. I think they're doing it a little bit better now, but I think it's far from perfect.
Is any of the other folks?
They're releasing 5 weeks of payments this week, and folks should be filing now for the week of May 2nd and May 9th. So I think they are beginning to catch up. But again, I want to reiterate that after the Great Recession, we knew how poor our system was then. And I took those calls as a staff person every day the way Steve's staff is now, and I'm still taking them myself as a legislator. We've had a long time. You cannot have a state-of-the-art functioning system without investing in it, and we never did that. So this is something we're going to have to keep up front as we negotiate budgets going forward in the next couple of years, because if this will happen again, and if we don't update the system, we're going to continue to fail our citizens. So I think it's incumbent on us to keep this issue up front.
So I'm going to ask Chris Saello's on the phone. Chris is the CEO of the United Way of Chester County. He has a number of perspectives on this, one of all the good work the United Way does, but also the resources they have. I'm going to ask Chris if he'd be kind enough to share some of the stuff that he's provided in the text with us and let us know. After that, I'm going to be recognizing the other chambers and then the elected officials for final thoughts. But I thought it was important having Chris on personally with all the good work that he and his agency do, share, particularly this time of need, the ways that they can be helpful. Chris?
All of the business owners on here. I know many of them are struggling, but so many businesses as well as individuals have stepped forward to support our United Way COVID response fund for the county. It has been tremendous, the response we've gotten. We've raised $760,000 in the last 8 weeks. We've already pushed out over $411,000 to 62 nonprofits throughout the county. And I see Rachel is on here. And so many nonprofits have really stepped up through the process. So I want you to know that the nonprofit sector remains working, and you know, the after effects of all of the shutdown are that there are a lot of people that are hungry, and there are a lot of people that are dealing with a lot of issues they've never thought they would face in their lifetime. And you've got some incredible nonprofits out there who've turned on a dime. Some are doing things that have nothing to do with their mission, but there's a community need, and they've responded. So thank you to all the nonprofits for that. I wanted to just mention the Financial Stability Center. We're blessed in Chester County to have the only financial like facility. There's 67 counties. We started the Financial Stability Center about, well, actually, I think it's about 6 years ago this month, and it is a center where we've commingled nonprofit services with all of the workforce development services. And we've got navigators that we fund who work with individuals to help them with financial stability issues, to help them increase income, decrease debt, and increase assets. They've never stopped operating through this crisis. And so I would encourage you, if you've got friends, family, or yourselves are dealing with financial stability issues, call the United Way Financial Stability Center. Obviously, with the Career Lake being closed, they are not there, but leave a message. Our navigators will get back to you, and they'll work with you. We also have counseling services through that center that is provided by Family Service of Chester County. So there's still a lot of services. Our board is fully prepared to ramp up those services even more, because we do realize the collateral damage from this pandemic crisis is going to cause a lot more people in Chester County to be financially unstable. And we're probably going to need to expand on those financial stability services. So, you know, feel free to reach out to me at any time. Our United Way is operating remotely, but we are operating, and we've got staff working on a lot of different issues in partnership with the county, with the chambers, and others. And we will keep fighting for the community, and we're there to help you any way we can. So just reach out to us. And thanks for hosting. These have been really informative.
Thanks for your help. I apologize. Before we go to Cheryl and then Chris, the other chambers, I apologize, but early on, we had a question from Lori. I promised her we would get to her and then got caught up in other questions. So I'm going to let Lori go, and then we'll go to Cheryl. So Lori, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I don't really have a question, but since everybody is on here, I just had a few things I'd like to speak out as a small business. I have been talking with John Lawrence, and he has been a big help to me, but it seems like everybody's forgetting the real small business. I am a one business owner, a one owner business. I live in the rural borough of Oxford, and that's where my shop is. It's me that runs it. I have no employees, so no government help I have been eligible for. I did receive money from EIDL, but because money ran out on that, they advised me that I was only allowed $1,000 because I only had one employee. Well, $1,000 maybe covered the rent. So I'm just a little disheartened there because we're talking about, when we talk about opening the businesses, everyone's categorizing them. So we got salons and restaurants, and I understand the importance of that. But what about my little shop where I may have 1 or 2 people in there at a time? All my events have been canceled, and I understand that because there's larger groups. But why can't I open? So I'm being categorized under these big bookstores. I don't understand where I heard like South Carolina, when they were shut down, that they were 5 people for 1,000 square feet. Why couldn't we ever do something like that? You know, we brought that up with the senator. Nothing really came of that. I have reached out to the state senator, and I have reached out to the governor. I don't get anything back. The only thing I got back once was a form letter, and it didn't even relate to what I had stated. So I apologize. You can probably tell my frustration in my voice, but I'm one person. So I appreciate that Chester County has now has a fund going. I did apply for that on Monday. I did find out, again, with the help of John Lawrence and Chris McHenry, that I was eligible for it. So I'm waiting on that. You know, the problem with us, some people were talking about how they have to plan ahead. Well, our orders, are 3 months in advance. So we haven't been able to get shipments. And then when I do get orders in, they're COD. It's just how it works. So I'm not making any money during the week to pay for those. What else was I going to say? I was writing things down. I guess my biggest thing was they're forgetting about the real small mom and pops. You know, they're not allowing us to open it, and I don't get it. I just don't get it. You know, we respect it, and if we're in there, we do follow guidelines. We would definitely follow guidelines. That's not the issue at all. But like someone else stated, why can you go to Walmart where there's hundreds of people, or to landscaping where there's all kinds of people, but you can't walk into my shop, 1 or 2 people and me, and that's it.
Well, let's see if there's feedback. Laurie, it's a good question. The questions have been asked on every single one of these calls, which is when you attempt to classify businesses by category, you don't take anything into account to give the business owner the opportunity.
Yeah, because I mean, I don't understand. Chester County is one of the biggest counties is the biggest county in the state, and it shouldn't even be done by county as far as I'm concerned, because again, we're being categorized. There's a lot of rural little areas in here. What's that?
Well, let's see if any of the
Oxford is not Westchester, which is a good, you know, we're being put in there with Westchester.
Well, just to be clear, the Chester County Chamber loves Oxford and Westchester. So any elected officials want to talk about this idea or this challenge that a lot of the small businesses, they're being categorized? You know, a bed and breakfast is not the Marriott, a comic book store is not a Walmart. Any thoughts on that?
But Laurie, I will tell you, the members of the legislature, many of them are from small businesses just like yours. Okay, I owned a retail garden center business. Okay, it was me and my wife for just about 90% of the year, just working alone in the garden center. We didn't have many employees, and so I understand exactly what you're talking about, how hard it is. Plus, you have to pay rent on another facility somewhere else on your shop, most likely. You have to order your supplies, and those costs don't stop. You're probably still paying business insurance and liability insurance, but you can't bring a customer in. And there are ways we can make this safe. And I think if you watched with the news I think it was last Saturday, the one woman in media tried to open her salon, and she was threatened she would lose her license from the municipality, her occupancy for her building license. She would lose her license to cut hair from the state. And the governor actually said that you will lose your insurance.
Yeah, that's terrible.
So, which I've never heard of. I've never heard of one governor threaten that except our governor, which I thought that was that's just the height of hypocrisy for him to go out there. I'm sure the insurance people back in Harrisburg were all smiling. You know,
And it's not a nice thing to say, but he's still getting his paycheck. He's got
well,
no
he's
concern.
wealthy enough he doesn't have to take a paycheck, but you know.
Where's he putting his money?
So, well, you know,
Okay.
but
All right.
again,
In fairness, everybody, we should move along. I want to recognize Cheryl Kuhn. Cheryl is the CEO of the Southern Chester County Chamber. Invite her comments, and then Chris Grove from the Oxford Chamber. Allow them, please, and invite them to share their thoughts, and then we will go to closing comments from the legislators. And remember, in fairness to them, we're going to go in reverse order. So our first legislator up will be Representative Chris Sappey. So with that, Cheryl, thank you for being with us and helping make this possible.
Sure. Thank you, Guy, and thank you, Mary Ann, for organizing it. And thank you to all of our elected officials for being on today. I was able to be on one of the other calls, and unfortunately, we're hearing the same things. I could probably attest to this better than I could, but hearing the same things across the entire county. What we're hearing from you is no different than some of the other, or many of the other stories, unfortunately. It's very difficult. I feel very strongly that our governor has failed us. It's a debacle, and it shouldn't have been handled that way. It did not need to be handled that way. It was not necessary that it was handled that way. And he just continues on with his own agenda, which is extremely disheartening, disappointing, and sickening, actually, for me, to sit here as a chamber executive and talk to 10, 15, 20, 25 members a day, help them along, and know that you don't have the support from your own governor. So I, for one, would love to get in my car, drive up there and sit outside his building and just stay there and sit there until he finally comes to his senses. But I don't think that'll happen. So since that isn't going to happen, we do other things and we work together. And I will say that the 9 chambers of commerce in Chester County work very well together. And in the normal business day, we shared best practices. We met quarterly. We all know each other, and there's several of those that are on the call today. And we were all asked to serve on the business task force from the county commissioners, which is a very new initiative. So we just need a couple of days to get it off the ground, but I'm hoping very much that it's action oriented, that it's going to do something and make a difference. Of course, it's going to help us be organized. It's going to help us be ready, but being ready, what does that mean? June 4th what does June 4th mean? The governor could turn around on June 3rd and change it. But we have to move forward. We have to stay focused, and we have to stay together. And we are all here to help you. I know you've heard that over and over, and what you need is to keep your businesses afloat. So I think what Representative Sappey said is very important, to keep sending your information to them, send your stories to them. If you know of other businesses, whether they are members of the chamber or not, that doesn't matter, but tell them to send their stories to the legislators so they have the ammunition to help us. And then what Representative Lawrence said is to reach out to those legislators. I'd like to know who those legislators are that have the governor's back, so I don't spend time trying to figure it out. If I know who they are, I'll reach out to them myself as well, but we all need to do it. We can't get off this call and go back to our unhappy worlds. We have to look forward, and we have to do the things these legislators are asking us to do, and we have to do more. So please look for information coming from the county's business task force, and call your chambers if there's something we can do for you. That's the best that I can say at this moment. Thank you for being on the call. Thanks, Guy. Thanks, Marianne.
Thanks, Cheryl. Chris Grove is the CEO of the Oxford Chamber. Chris, thanks for being with us, and please share your thoughts and comments with us.
Right. Thanks, Guy. Thanks all the county officials, elected officials for being on the call. Most importantly, thank you for all the small businesses for spending your time the last hour and 15 minutes with us. We are fighting for you every day. Lori, you're down the street from my office. It breaks my heart. You're our friends and neighbors, and we are here to try to support you, but we too are frustrated. We're not getting the answers that we need to share with you. And I think if anything, you're realizing today that you're not in this alone. I mean, we're all frustrated. That doesn't make it any easier for you. It doesn't put money back in your business. But I think being all in this together, know that you're not alone, and you're not just fighting this alone. We all are fighting this with you and for you. And with that, hopefully you can have a nice weekend. It's supposed to be beautiful. You know, disconnect for a minute. I think mental health is a big part of all of this as well. And if you can just try to disconnect, not watch the news, and not, you know, check your email at least for a couple hours, maybe it'll bring some peace. Have a nice weekend, everybody.
Thanks, Chris. I appreciate your support. And as Cheryl and Chris said, there are other chamber leaders. I saw Donna from the Western Chamber as well. I appreciate their support. This is our third in a series. The fourth one will be on Monday at 10 a.m. with legislators who represent the eastern part of the county. But again, there's no legal requirement that you live in their district. We would encourage folks to be on that as well. All the legislators have been good enough to answer questions from everyone across the county, whoever happens to be on. So that is on Monday at 10. With that, we're going to go to our elected officials who are on here, and we'll begin in reverse order. Representative Chris Sappey will be first, followed by Representative Lawrence, Barrar, and we'll end with Senator Killion. So Representative Sappey, the floor is yours. I'm going to mute my microphone.
And
Can
you hear me?
There we go. Now we can,
Okay.
please.
Thank you so much for having me, and thanks for taking time to join the call today. It's so important that we all hear from you and that we hear your particular stories. Lori, your one-man shop story is one, I'll be honest, that I have not heard. So I'm very grateful that you took the time to be on the call to share that with us, and I'll be bringing that back to people in my caucus as well. It's, you know, this is a really challenging time. There's no roadmap. There never has been for a situation like this. And I think it just illustrates to me the need for forward planning. I think we're very good at reacting in government, but we're not good at being proactive. And as a mom and as a former business person and as a policy person, I just find it sort of irresponsible. And I'm hoping that we can reverse course here and get some specific planning out of the administration. I know that's what I'm here for. And I know the colleagues that are on the phone with me want that too. So, you know, I think we're going to, you know, keep pushing for the businesses and the business owners here in our area. And you know, I know our county commissioners are working very hard, you know, as well. So we all have a shared interest. I think we just need to put everything aside. And, you know, I'm done talking about what went wrong. I really want the specifics about going forward. So I'm here for you. My number is 484-200-8264. Call me anytime, whether, you know, you live in the 158th or not. And have a wonderful weekend. Take care. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Representative John Lawrence.
Yeah, Guy, thank you. And I'd like to thank Chris and Cheryl for all their work as well, as I mentioned earlier. And Lori, just very briefly, we actually did have a bill that we moved a little bit ago, that if you had a business, a small business where there was one employee and one customer, that you could reopen that business regardless of what the business was, provided that you were meeting the CDC requirements and everything like that. So that bill passed the House and is waiting action in the Senate. So I know Senator Killion had to jump off the call, but we'll hope our friends in the Senate get moving on that. I do want to commend each of you for being on the call and for the, I mean, look, this is a challenging circumstance. It's not lost on me, and it's something I think about all the time. It's something I think about when I go to sleep and when I wake up in the morning. This coronavirus, which 3 months ago no one had ever heard of, is going to lead to the bankruptcy of hundreds of thousands of small businesses across the Commonwealth. And it's absolutely terrible. I'm trying to work towards solutions, right? There's a lot of rhetoric right now, frankly, on both sides of the aisle. I'm trying to work towards solutions, as I mentioned earlier, with the testing bill, with some of this legislation that we're moving to, you know, there's no reason on earth that someone, for example, can't sell a house. There's no reason on earth someone can't rent an apartment. There's no reason on earth that I can buy a tomato plant at Lowe's, but I can't buy it at a garden center. Or I can buy a greeting card at Giant, but I can't buy one at the card store next door, which has 1/100th of the foot traffic that that Giant has. There needs to be an approach that's based on reason and science, and not on you know, a blanket approach that maybe was appropriate for a short period of time, but we are going on 3 months here. We're in the 2.5 month now of this. So my office door is open. Actually, I shouldn't say that because actually it is technically closed. We are not taking walk-ins. However, our phones are on, and we've gotten many calls. We've gotten calls from folks who are on this call today. My office staff is here, and the phones are ringing off the hook. So we are here to help in any way we can. And I'm very much interested in your feedback. If you have ideas for legislation, please let me know. I will get those bills introduced. Thank you, Guy.
Thank you so much, John. I appreciate it. Steve Barrar, Representative Barrar, is our final elected official. As was mentioned, Senator Killion had to go. In fairness, I would tell you that we had asked the elected officials to set aside 45 minutes. We're now approaching an hour and 20 minutes or hour and 15 minutes. So like many of you have to get back to work. They have to get back to work. But I appreciate all of them being here, and I want to turn over to Representative Barrar. And thank you for being with us, Steve.
Since I missed you yesterday, I thought it would be rude of me if I were to jump off the phone too early and you'd smack me or something like that, Guy. So, hey, Guy, I have one question for you. Where has the State Chamber of Commerce been? We have not heard one word from the State Chamber, which is surprising. Correct me if I'm wrong, John or Christine, but I can't even remember getting an email from them in the last 5 or 6 weeks about
I
what's
will say,
going on.
Steve, I saw something from Gene Barr. He put out a statement a little bit ago, but I will agree with you. I think the State Chamber could be much more forceful.
Right. I think they're a big voice in Harrisburg, maybe not locally, because I'm a big believer. I'm still a member of the Chadds Ford Business Association and Western Delaware County Business Association, the Chichester Business Association. So I believe in these associations and the voice that they carry with them. And I try to be that voice when I'm in Harrisburg, because that's how I got started in business. I ran because I wanted to be. I lived in a town that I felt was very unfair to small business owners. I ran for township commissioner, eventually won that race, and then I became a state representative. And I've always tried to look out for small business, but we have, when this is over, when we just opening up isn't going to solve our economic problems. We need to have an economic plan in place that's going to allow us to recover from this. I'm a believer that a lot of our small businesses we will never see open again, and I think it's sad because we could have done so much more to help them prepare for this and get them in place. I hope I'm wrong. I hope next time I'm on this, you guys will say, "Hey, you were 100% wrong. All those businesses were able to recover." And maybe I'm being too pessimistic, but I'm just hopeful from what I see happening in Harrisburg at this point in time. I think the legislative and we're doing a great job. We're watching out for as many groups as we can. And I hate to say groups, but really the business people are a group. And whether they're small, medium, or large, okay, we want to see you all prosper. And it breaks my heart to see what we're seeing and some of the emails that we get and phone calls we get and the desperation that we hear. But I think, I've announced my retirement, that I'm retiring at the end of this term. And I think I'm working harder now than I did in my very first term because of what's going on. And it's, we need leadership right now. We need people to step forward, but we need our business community to, like I said earlier, to be the innovators of new concepts to how do we open restaurants? How do we open hair salons and keep our customers safe? And I truly believe if we just turn the key, open the door, and tell you guys to run through it, that you'll come up with all the greatest ideas on how to keep your customers safe and reopen. And we are going to beat this thing. It's going to take some time, but I truly believe that there are a lot brighter days ahead for us. Thanks, Guy.
Thank you, Representative, and thanks to all the representatives and the chamber leaders from across our county being with us. We have another one of these on Monday at 10 with the Eastern legislators. Just a few final things. One is I have to defend our buddy Gene Barr, who's a Delco boy. Gene is running weekly calls with every trade association, from restaurants to hotels to farmers to hospitals and chambers. Many of us are on those calls. And he has a Bringing Pennsylvania Back, the state chambers of Bringing Pennsylvania Back website, which you can link to from ours, that has protocols to open, as well as PPE suppliers across Pennsylvania for masks and shields. So I can't speak to the lobbying side. I would just tell you on the leadership and the teamwork side, they've been very accessible and helpful to us. But I will make sure to nudge them to make sure that they're reaching out to all of you. But from our perspective, I would just share that we will continue to do these sort of things to share information. And as we said at the outset, our goal is this: we think we think we closed too much for too long. We think that we need to reopen safely, but we need to begin that process. And you touched today on this call about some of those things. But we will continue to work with the other chambers and the elected officials in this region so that when our day comes to go yellow and go green, that every single business that's eligible is ready to go. Because as we said all along, the only thing worse than being closed 8, 9, 10, or 20 weeks is for you not to be empowered to open on that day. So we want to be with you when that happens. As a follow-up, you can contact us on our webpage. All the elected officials have web pages or Facebook or ways you can reach them. If you ever don't know how to get to them, you can come to us. If you'd like to share an idea or suggestion with our chamber and something we could be doing more of or doing differently, let us know. And I just would urge the legislators as we leave, again, that we need a data-driven, transparent plan to get us open where we have benchmarks and we know what they are, and we need dates. It's disheartening as these weeks go by to not only not be in the next group, but to not know when our time is, as all the folks here, whether you're in comic books, restaurants, a bed and breakfast, or a lawn care, you need to know when you open so your supplies are there and your staff there. So we need that. And we really would hope the governor would consider, and the legislature will reach out, whether it's through hearings or other way. Talk to the health departments in Delaware. Talk to the health department in Ohio. Talk to the health department in New York. What are they seeing that we're not seeing? You know, how in a week, I hate to exaggerate the point, in a week, you will be able to buy a comic book in Queens. You will not be able to buy a comic book in Oxford. That just shouldn't happen. It's no one's asking to be unsafe, but somehow the science we're using, the metrics and the data points are different than in neighboring states. We have to figure out how to do this safely and do this together. The last substantive point is liability. We have to know what the guidelines are that we want businesses to follow, and we have to protect them. The governor issued an executive order to protect doctors and nurses working in ERs so they couldn't be sued. He didn't protect the hospitals. We asked people to volunteer to make masks. We haven't protected them. We asked whiskey distilleries and beer makers to stop and make hand sanitizer. We haven't protected them. We asked people that made widgets to make face shields and to help repair ventilators. They haven't been protected. And we're going to ask the men and women on this call to open up their businesses at some point, and they need to know that they should be encouraged to follow guidelines and that they're not going to be subject to lawsuits. If they don't follow the law, if they're disrespectful or reckless with their workers or customers, whack them. But if they do their best and they follow the law and they follow the compliance, they should know they do that safely. Again, we go back to our point. We want every business that can open to reopen and do it safely. So I thank you so very much. This conversation was very much in keeping with the way we do things in the county. Everybody answered every question, was accessible, and told you how to reach them. So we'll continue to follow in that tradition. We're going to take Chris's advice, and we're going to have an email-free weekend and spend time with our family and friends, although I'm sure I'll get an email 30 seconds after this call. But we wish you all well. Have a great weekend, everyone. Thanks so much.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.